appears we cannot make the turn. Turns out this is really giving me a headache. It looks like that's plenty in the model, but then over here at the actual sink, it's really tight. All right, we're done. I think we just keep the bathroom vanity up on the deck. Let's get the sinks in. The last major piece to finish our bathroom and our upstairs living space is a double vanity. And when looking at these, we quickly realized that we had champagne taste on a beer budget. This is a space we intend to be in for quite a while, so a cheap box store vanity was not in the cards, and honestly, they're not really that cheap. We came across this vanity online that we love the look of, but not the price tag, and the materials weren't even there to back up the price. So I'm gonna do what any ambitious DIYer does, which is spend just as much money and way more time building one myself. Now I've got some woodworking tools, but that does not make me a professional YouTube woodworker, the likes of Blacktail Studios or Keith Johnson, who could easily charge $20,000 for a vanity like this. But I'm gonna do my best to take you along every step of the way, the good and the bad. Before we jump into the project though, I gotta tell you about Buy Land, Build Dreams. It's something we're starting up this year to help those building their dream home and homestead, whether you're hiring the work out or taking it on yourself. And we're launching our first product called the No Regrets Build Guide. We're targeting a launch date in March this year, 2026. And to reward those who are watching our everyday videos like this one, we're giving away some special launch bonuses with the product. The details are still a surprise, but some of the tips in just these bonuses have literally saved us thousands of dollars, and we want to pass that along. All you have to do to get the launch bonuses with the product is get onto our email list, scan the QR code above, masondixonacres.com, and you'll be ready to go in March when we launch this product. You'll be the first to know about it. We are so excited.
Now, like every good DIY project, this one started with a good plan. When it comes to woodworking, my free tool of choice to create models is SketchUp. It took some learning to get used to how SketchUp works because it's not what I'm used to. It's known as a direct modeler, which means you can push, pull, and move features and surfaces wherever you want. None of the features rely on dimensions or other features to generate. This is opposed to what I'm used to from the engineering world, which is parametric modeling, and that's what you find in higher level CAD softwares like SolidWorks or NX, where there's a feature history and you can reliably go back to change one dimension and the rest of the model will update accordingly. SketchUp does not do that. It is very manual, but that can be a good thing for quickly getting a concept drawn up. It's free and easy to learn, so that's why it's my tool for pretty low stakes projects like cabinetry or furniture. This vanity took me about a day to model up and really think through how I was going to make each piece and how it was going to assemble with all the dados and layers, which I'll spare the boring details of all that thinking. In the end, I laid all my flat pieces of the cabinet carcass out on a 4x8 rectangle in the model to get the best use out of my material, and I'm off to the races. For cutting out all these sheet goods, I'm going back to my good old reliable foam board on a piece of plywood and some sawhorses. I've upgraded my cutting tool from that Kreg AccuCut with my DeWalt circular saw to Kreg's track saw, which is just a lot easier to use. It's nice to be able to plunge cut, and there isn't as much play in a dedicated track saw as there is in something like the AccuCut. So the track saw definitely made things easy. The track saw or any other method that you have to guide a circular saw to cut sheet goods flat on a piece of foam board is so much easier than trying to wrestle things onto a table saw. Please don't do that if you don't absolutely have to. I personally will never rip down full sheets on a table saw again. Let's talk about materials. I have a couple different types of materials here because they're left over from a previous cabinetry project. I just had some extras. The main carcass is just basic 3/4 inch birch plywood, and I needed a pretty big piece for the back panel, so that is actually 1/2 inch maple veneered MDF. And then for the end skins, I have some 1/4 inch maple veneered MDF. I have built one somewhat similar vanity before. It was for a bathroom renovation at my mom's house about 7 years ago. Believe it or not, some of these materials are from that project. They've been sitting around that long. But I learned some things in that project that I think I can do a lot better this time around. I'm using better materials for the face frame and the doors and drawers, better drawer slides, better hardware in general. So I think this is going to turn out a lot better. And frankly, my woodworking skills have probably gotten a little bit better in those 7 years too. With all the sheet goods for the carcass and the cabinet skins cut down to size, I started routing out dados. Dados have become my preferred cabinet assembly method just because they're pretty foolproof when it comes to the actual glue up, which is where time counts. You can get things square quickly and precisely. It is more work up front than just butting things together and putting some screws in it, but I do think it yields a higher quality outcome with less trouble when it comes to the glue up phase, especially if you're working by yourself like I am here. So using my little trim router and a straight bit, I just routed out 3/4 inch grooves lined up with my top stretchers and my bottom panel. These middle dividers need a big cutout out of them to accommodate the sinks and the drain flanges. So one thing that's kind of non-traditional about this vanity is that the drawers are going to be on the outside with one big cabinet where the plumbing is in the middle. Usually it's flipped for double sinks. Elaine and I just really like the look of having the cabinet in the center rather than two sets of cabinet with drawers in the center. This will make building the drawers a lot tougher, but that's something we're willing to accept to get this look. I traced the panel on a second cutout so I could duplicate it and then round it over the edges just so it looked nice, because this will be visible from the inside of that cabinet. With all the cabinet carcass pieces prepared, it's time for the glue up. I'm just using some regular old Type Bond 2, I believe it is. And here's where those dados really shine. It's so easy just to set the pieces in place, lock the dados and end rabbets together, and then throw a couple drywall screws in it to keep things tight while the glue dries. Now this back panel is actually 1/2 inch MDF with a maple veneer on the front and back. In the past, I've used 1/4 inch ply for back panels and just sort of recessed it in the back with some dados just to make sure everything stays square. But frankly, I didn't have a piece of 1/4 inch this big. All I had was this 1/2 inch, so it's a little bit overkill for a back panel. It's just to keep things stiff and square, but it worked, and all I did was butt it up to the back. I didn't make any recesses or dados for this. The key though was cutting this thing nice and square so I could use it to make sure my cabinet carcass was perfectly square. I clamped it in place, ran some screws into the dividers and the end panels from the backside, and it was good to go. Did the same thing from the bottom of the cabinet into the dividers just to make sure this thing was rock solid. And I do always drill with a countersink drill bit first, just so the screws are nice and flush if I ever need to put any paneling or anything like that. It's just a cleaner look. I feel like it's worth the extra second or two to do it. And for anything that's going to get an overlay piece or a decorative panel on top of it, you want to have those screws nice and flush.
This is what $133 worth of rough cut white oak looks like. $5.50 a board foot, random widths and lengths.
Now it's on to making the pretty stuff, which is the face frame. So of course, reference the model is a first step to get all of my finished lengths and widths for all of my parts. Cut down my white oak to rough lengths, and one cool thing about the track saw is you can also use it kind of as a jointer to give you that first initial straight edge on the board so it doesn't get all jammed up going through the table saw. Then I fired up the old planer to turn this rough cut lumber into smooth lumber on all 4 sides. This is actually my first time ever working with white oak. I've worked with a lot of red oak, black walnut, plenty of pine and poplar, but never have I gone out and got white oak for a project. So this is a first for me. I do like the material. I can see why it's so popular. Thankfully, we have a small hardwood supply guy right in our town. He supplies wood for like guitar bodies to Epiphone and all kinds of crazy niche things. But he leaves the shop open to the public. You can just walk in, look at all the boards that he's got leaning up against the wall and pick a few out. So that's what I did. And I thought the prices were really, really reasonable. $133 for this much white oak. I feel like in a bigger store, they would absolutely try to fleece you on the price of hardwood lumber like this. Cutting all the pieces for a face frame down to final length is a pretty critical operation, just because if they're not perfect, the thing's going to be a little wonky. You're going to have gaps where the stiles and rails come together. So I think the most foolproof method for this is cutting them all at the same time. So I just clamp them together, cut them on the miter saw. When I lay these pieces out initially, I try to look for all the defects, the knots, whatever it is, put those all facing backwards. And I know I'm going to get flack from this from real woodworkers, but I am not above using pocket holes to assemble face frames. It's really started with some glue, and it's completely invisible once the face frame is installed. So I use this Craig 720 jig. It's been great to me over the years. I'll link it below. Makes it really easy to put in a bunch of pocket holes all at once. And I would definitely recommend it. I've used it a ton on this house build project. I try to really take my time when I'm actually fastening everything together. I just use a clamp to hold the pieces flush. And it's hard to get it absolutely perfect, but I think if you're on a flat surface and you're using the clamp, you can get it pretty darn good. Just as a sanity check, I use a piece of plywood sometimes to just make sure that my corners are held square, especially when it comes to like drawer openings, because I'm gonna have to custom cut these drawers eventually anyway. They're gonna be inset drawers, so they'll sit inside the face frame opening, and it'll just make my life a lot easier if the openings are nice and square. I decided last minute to put a groove down this little rail. It's only 1 inch by 3/4 inch and about 3 foot long. This is what separates the front doors from the drawer above them. And I was worried that if at some point this ever warps, it's going to be really hard to straighten it out again. So putting this groove in here will allow me to put a piece of steel in there or whatever I need to do to try to keep that straight. Hopefully I don't need to use it, but I figured it'd be easier if it's already in there. And here's the point at which I realized I switched the middle and top rail for this section of the face frame. If you notice, the middle rails are just a little bit thicker than the top and bottom, and I really wasn't even paying attention to it on the other sides. It's just a miracle those happen to turn out right, but I did mess it up on this side. So thankfully the glue wasn't fully dried yet and I was able to hammer them apart, but no matter how well you plan for some of these projects, inevitably you're gonna screw something up. So just get ready for that. I don't think I've done a single, even remotely complicated woodworking project without screwing something up. So it's really just part of the game. Next was tackling probably the hardest part of the face frame, which are these sort of faux legs. They're supposed to look like full solid legs all the way through, but they're really just veneer pieces that I'm applying onto the front of the face frame. These pieces needed to look kind of thin to be realistic, so I resawed some 1 inch thick stock into 1/2 inch strips using my bandsaw. The key to these guys was making a really good router jig. I put together a jig of just some scrap OSB and plywood, and it had the 2 rectangular pockets that I was going to router out of my 1/2 inch thick white oak strips. I adjusted the jig so it held the pieces nice and snug, but not too snug. Then I put this pattern bit into my router, so notice it's got the bearing on the top of the bit. That allows me to plunge down into the material, and that bearing will follow my template. The router bit obviously leaves a round radius at the corners. There's no way to route a perfectly square pocket with a round bit. So for all the pockets, I very tediously chiseled out all the corners to a nice square edge, and it was really worth the effort. I'm glad I did that. It makes it look a whole lot better having a good square edge. On the corner overlays, I wanted to make it look like it truly wrapped around the corner as a solid piece of wood. So to make this work with a cabinet without having to make like a true table leg, I decided to do a miter fold on the pieces themselves. So the first step of that is beveling the edges at a 45 and then gluing them together to make sort of a right angle. For the miter fold process, I found nothing better than just using some plain old masking tape on the surface, wiping a little bit of glue on the butting edges, then folding it and keeping it there with some more tape or a weight. That yields a really crisp corner edge, and it truly does look like a solid piece when it was all installed. To fasten the face frame to the cabinet, I'm taking kind of a 2-prong approach. First is pocket hole screws along the top and bottom edge that once the surfaces are on, you're never going to see them. Second was for the center stiles. I wasn't able to use pocket hole screws there because you would see them from the inside of the cabinet, and I didn't like that. So for those, I carefully marked and matched biscuits in the edge of the plywood and into my face frame. Before clear coating this thing, I wanted to get the sinks in here so we could mock up exactly what our distance is. This Vanity is a little bit different than most. Usually you're gonna plumb both sinks separately. Each sink is gonna kind of have its own open cabinet underneath, and then you'll just have some drawers in the middle. Our situation is a little bit different because I plumbed one single drain line out of the wall. Even with double sinks, I seem to like to just split them off in the cabinet rather than in the wall. And this situation, especially because we couldn't get a vent up through the roof from within that wall. So we're gonna be using an air admittance valve or a mechanical vent in this sink. So just one trap, one vent, and we're gonna plumb these together, basically like a double kitchen sink underneath the counter. I did stub out individual water lines for the sink, so I don't need to split those off. But we just needed to make sure that these
sink tail pieces do not interfere with the side dividers of our cabinet. That's the risk with this configuration. And you kind of have to balance the plumbing with how it looks aesthetically up top. Luckily, this looks really good. Having that SketchUp model really, really helped. And from the start, we were thinking about this, where these drains were gonna go, and I also modeled the locations of the stub out. So here's the drain, and then here's my hot and cold water. This is an outlet back here. That's where they're actually gonna come through in the back of the cabinet, according to the model anyway. So I'm looking at the sinks as well in this model, and I'm looking at how much space is here. It looks like that's plenty in the model. But then over here at the actual sink, it's really tight. And I'm like, what the heck? What did I get wrong? Well, it turns out I modeled the sink to the interior dimensions of the bowl, which is 12 inches. Whereas in real life, when you have the flanges, that bumps it out to 14.5 inches. So it just barely fits in here. And that means we don't have as much room back here as I thought we would. I knew we were gonna have to carve out something, but this is not what I pictured. So this line right here is the backsplash. We're gonna use a piece of the countertop up vertically. And this ring represents our faucets. This is the same diameter. It's a washer that came with it. So both the center faucet and the two handles. And as you can see, we are interfering with the sink when I account for that backsplash. So we have to shift this whole sink forward about 3/4 of an inch at a bare minimum. And I'm still gonna have to carve out some wood here. Luckily, it does look like we can do that. There's an extra 1/2 inch here that I can take out of this top piece. And then I'll carve a little bit out of the side dividers here in order to scoot this flange another 1/4 inch in, and that will get us 3/4 inches further forward. This really goes to show the importance of test fitting things. Definitely reinforces that models are not always perfect. I remember this back from engineering days as well, many times. Assembling things that seem to work in the model, but just don't work in real life. There's just so much that you can easily overlook. It's like it was never there. Now we are looking much more spacious back here for our faucet hole. We even have some wiggle room, and I marked out where I'm gonna carve out all the wood just to give this some breathing room. While we're at it though, we're going to mark out our handle spacing. That's what's in this bag here, just so that we have that locked down when the countertop guys come. That's the distance from the handle to the faucet. Usually between 4 to 8 inches off center. I'm thinking we're gonna be closer to 4. The only other thing we gotta consider is this divider will limit where we can put the handle down through this piece here. So I think 4 is gonna be about the minimum. We'll probably end up around there. That's typical minimum distance right there.
That looks good.
And that would fit fine. We could go a little bit, we could go up to that tighter, but
closer.
Yeah, I think 4 is standard.
Decided.
Easy.
But you're envisioning this stays right here?
Roughly. I mean, it could shift back a little bit.
Just thinking about washing your hands and where the drain is.
It's 3 inches off the back edge right now.
I wonder how far like this is typically.
It totally depends on the faucet because of the slope of the faucet.
I mean, this is deep enough that that shouldn't be an issue.
I think honestly you want it as far forward as possible because it's the less fur you have to reach to.
I think right there is good.
Okay.
To finish the inside of the cabinet, I'm just using cheap old Minwax fast drying poly. I just had this can laying around, brushing it on, then rolling it out to get it as smooth as possible. It doesn't leave the smoothest possible finish like you get with a spray on, but this was quick and easy. Did 2 coats, did a light sand in between, and it's a totally serviceable finish. It's down in the base cabinet, so you're really not gonna see it, and especially not where the drawers are at on the sides. With the inside of the cabinet finished, I could officially attach the face frame. So first was putting on the fake leg fronts that I made, just glued them on, used some weights, nothing fancy there at all. Then I could do the final fastening of the face frame onto the cabinet body, put a little bit of glue around all the mating surfaces, especially the biscuits, place it on there, got the biscuits aligned, then I could drive all those pocket holes in top and bottom. Having no exposed fasteners is important to me. I just really like the clean look, but I really wanted those center styles to have some extra holding power because that's where our doors mount. So I feel like the biscuits and glue do a really good job at that. Same process for the maple veneer panels, just a little bit of glue and some weights to hold it until it dried. As a little spoiler, when we get to the finishing, the maple veneer just didn't finish nearly as well as this nice white oak did. And for the doors and drawers, I did end up buying a sheet of 1/4 inch white oak plywood. I wish I would have done that for the end skins too, just so it all matched. The maple just has a much tighter grain appearance, and it didn't take the finish quite as well. So just get the right type of plywood and don't use scraps like me if you're doing this project yourself.
So here's a happy little accident. I kind of realized as I'm gluing up these corner pieces, these middle stiles here were meant to be 3.5 inches in the model, but the board I had, I could pretty much get this and this one over here out of one board, but I couldn't get a full 3.5 inches. These became 3.25. That shrunk the whole face frame by a 1/2 inch. It was supposed to come out flush with this panel here, but I was like, it's all right. I'm just gonna be overlapping this anyway, no big deal. But the happy accident was actually that the reveal between the edge of this and the edge of the face frame actually became closer to being the same by doing that. So I'll modify that in the plans in case I ever release these plans for sale. These ended up both being about a 5/8 of an inch, whereas if this was wider, it would have added 1/8 here, and then it would have pushed this whole thing over, and this would have been skinnier by 1/8 of an inch, so it would have been somewhat noticeable. But that's a happy little accident right there. Thanks, Bob Ross.
One of the fun things about woodworking is every piece of a project is kind of like its own little mini project within the bigger project, and these legs were no different. So I wanted to replicate the legs from the model. They have a taper to them, they have this little cove feature. So I started off with gluing some blanks together to get me some square stock. Before putting the taper on, I wanted to get this little cove feature cut in, which really was a headache.
I thought these legs were gonna be the easiest part of the project. Turns out this is really giving me a headache. Look how badly burned this is with my core box bit. These things really suck. I'm not sure if I'm using it wrong, but even on softwood like this birch, it likes to burn, and it's really bad on this oak. Like I can't use that. I can't even sand that out. Does not help that this router table can only take this cheap Craftsman router, which has one speed of 25,000 RPM. So even with these small bits, it feels like it's too fast. I'm gonna compromise on design a little bit with a regular old cove bit. I won't get this little top flute, but I don't think you'll see it. Not awful. Got to be careful not to sag at the corners, but it's a little bit more than I wanted originally. I think that's the best we're going to be able to do though.
This seems counterintuitive, but I also found a faster feed rate gave me a better result. It didn't give the router bit a chance to start burning. I want to say about 1 inch per second is what was the best result. After conquering the cove and getting all 7 of my legs ready, these things were ready to get their taper cut in. So I made a custom little taper jig, which I've used this method before. It works really nicely. Used some 2P10 super glue adhesive and some scrap wood to get my angle just right. I just sort of eyeballed the angle. Then I could clamp each piece to the jig and run it through the table saw. The tricky part here is once you've got 2 of the 4 angles cut, the piece will no longer sit on a flat jig like this. So you have to use your little wedge shim that you cut off to hold the leg up straight so you can cut the other 2 sides of the taper. I did some thinking on how I was going to fasten these to the cabinet body well. They have to be kind of sturdy because they are holding up quite a bit of weight. We're putting a quartz top on this with sinks and drawers and everything else. And because these are faux legs, I really just have my 3/4 inch plywood cabinet body to fasten to. So I decided to give it a little bit more mechanical strength than just glue. I was going to put dowels in to hold these in place while the glue dried and to give the legs a little extra bending strength. With everything mocked up, I decided to try to finish the legs first because especially the back legs were going to be inaccessible once this thing was installed. We went back and forth on literally dozens of different finishes, but settled on Rubio monocoat. I like that it's no VOC. It's basically just like a hard wax oil, so it actually smells quite nice. Don't need a mask when you're applying it. We probably got 15 to 20 different color packet samples from Rubio and settled on cocoa, at least to start, as you'll see. It's really, really forgiving too. Like you can't mess this up like you can with stain. And believe me, we've messed up some stained projects before. I think my favorite feature of this whole design is this piece of bullnose trim that runs around the whole front edge. It just ties together all the individual elements in this one continuous band, and I love how it wraps around those faux front legs. So that was definitely not something we were going to skip out with on this design. And I probably could have found this molding somewhere made out of white oak, but I felt like it was just a lot easier to make my own. So I used a 3/8 roundover bit in the router table and just rounded over 4 sides of a piece of stock. I think it was 1.5 inch by 3/4 inch thick. Then my plan was to rip that down in the table saw to just what I needed for the bullnose to end up with 2 pieces of trim out of 1 piece of stock.
Now it's on to this little front trim detail, which I just did this first bit of as a practice run off camera. It's pretty tedious work. We're working with pieces like this big, so I'm using some super glue to do a couple miters at a time, and then using wood glue to do the final glue on. In situations like little trim details like this where a 1/2 millimeter is noticeable, I usually will not measure and mark if I can possibly help it. I'll always try to just line it up and make a little pencil mark. And even then, sometimes I'm still coming back to the chop saw once or twice to get things just dialed in right. It's a little bit long. This little backstop helps keep tear out to a minimum. Yep, still just a hair long. One little trim, perfect.
The very last pieces to add were these spacers behind where the drawer slides are gonna mount. These are inset drawers, so I needed something flat there to mount the slides to.
It's time to move this thing upstairs, and it's pretty heavy and really long, so we can't really easily get it up the front stairs, the inside stairs, so we're gonna take it up the outside stairs. It's dark though, so this is gonna be interesting. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. It's really not that heavy. Look at that. Like it was made for it. I'm glad we came outside. It's been much harder from the inside. All right, we're done. I think we just keep the bathroom vanity up on the deck. Let's get the sinks in. Can we make the turn? Oh, it's gonna be a close one. Well, well, well. Appears we cannot make the turn. I wonder if we could put the corner into the bedroom door. I think we try that. We have decided that that is the arbitrary gap that we want against the wall. And now I'm starting to scribe this stuff out on the back. We got 5 things to cut out for it. I am not screwing this up again. I've screwed it up twice at our pantry cabinets. But I gotta get this outlet in here. I broke out the laser level. So that'll at least make sure I get the heights right here. I was able to basically run the pencil around that drain pipe there. I'm gonna put some crosshairs where these pipes touch. We should be good. These should make this thing a little easier to slide, not screwing our tile up. Home to Papa. Wow, even that lines up. Can't believe it. All right, I redeemed myself on that one. That all fit really, really well. Even down to the little V notches that I cut for that little tab to come through. I'm impressed. And here's the beauty of an adjustable box. Look at that, right where I needed it. And I don't know if this is just sheer luck or what, but this thing is perfectly level all the way around. That is not often that something like that happens. But needless to say, I am happy. The countertop template guy is actually en route, so we got this in just in the nick of time, and he's gonna get a 3D scan of it, and hopefully we can actually go see this get cut out at their shop.
The countertop fabricator actually invited us out to their shop to see this slab getting cut, and we got a lot of awesome footage, so I'm going to do a separate little how it's made video on this Vanity countertop. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it, because this was honestly such a cool experience for a recovering engineer.
The countertop template went really well. It's now cut and it'll be here in a few days. And as we were walking by this, through the hallway, just glancing at the Vanity, the color of these feet, Elena decided that they're just a little bit too dark. So our original plan of going with this color is no longer. There's a rule pretty well known by you husbands out there watching, which is happy wife, happy life. So Despite the extra work, I'm going to use this here belt sander to sand down these legs, and we're going to change the color. Luckily, we didn't do the whole vanity. That wouldn't have been good. But we got even more samples, and I think we finally have settled on a lighter color that she's gonna like. I just gotta be careful now not to hurt these legs, not to break anything or mess anything up with this sander. The flat part should be pretty easy. There's just a little flat part on the top and then the taper. This is not gonna be so easy, and this is all end grain too, so it's really soaked in there. I might have to get a Dremel tool or something here to get that radius and still figure out how to keep this nice sharp edge. And this bottom edge that I stained too, we're just gonna leave that as is. Won't be able to see it, but I'm not gonna bother sanding that down. Whenever you're not sure how something's gonna turn out, always start on the one that's never gonna be seen, like this back center one. Well, it took it all off all right. Except for down in those really deep grooves. I think that's gonna be all right though. It'll be really hard to keep the defined, you know, flat versus taper. So that's probably just gonna all blend into one taper, but I think that'll work. I got the multi-tool out, and it was very clear initially that I just do not have the clearance up against this to get in there correctly. I tried it, started taking off the corner a little bit too much. It's just not gonna work. What I found will work though is a good old-fashioned piece of sandpaper and a pencil. And a lot more elbow grease, unfortunately. Pencil just keeps that pressure nice and even across. Then without the pencil and just a folded piece of paper, you can get down on the corner. It's slow and steady, but you can see it's starting to work. We're officially ready to apply the final finish. Hopefully this goes on in one coat. As the name implies, we're using Rubio monocoat. The new color is Vienna. We have the part A and the part B, which is like a hardener. That gets mixed in a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 part A to 1 part B. I'm using a gram scale to do that. And then once we get it mixed up, squeegee it onto the wood and rub it in with a cloth. It sits for 15 minutes, then you wipe it off. Doesn't really work like normal stain does. So you can leave it on too long, but you can't really take too much off when you wipe it off. I've heard from other content creators though that it really does look better in 2 coats. So we'll see how that works out. One thing I really do like about this stuff is it doesn't smell. It smells like kind of like beeswax, which is basically what it is. Hard wax oil rather. So got my scale zeroed out. We'll start off with maybe 6 grams of this, 2 grams of the other. So 6.3 of that, so we'll do 2 of this. Really not much at all in there, but it should go quite a ways. For these vertical surfaces, I think a lot of it's gonna have to be applied with the rag, just so it doesn't drip too much. So give this one final wipe. Get all the dust off of it. Now this is a maple veneer panel, which is different than the white oak that we use for all the trim pieces. The grain's a lot tighter on the maple, so it looks a lot different when it gets stained. This is something that if I could go back, I probably would change. We did end up ordering some white oak MDF veneer for the door and drawer front, so it doesn't look so different. This was a leftover from a previous project, so we used it. This side will be against the wall, so it's kind of our trial run. The other side, if it really turns out like it does not look like it belongs there, I should be able to cut it off and replace it, but hopefully it looks at least okay enough. I'm just gonna try using this glue brush to start off with, and then spreading it around. Just do small areas. Like I said, this side's against the wall, so it'll be practically invisible. This is a good time to mess up if we're gonna mess up. Here comes the inspector. Uh-oh, I love the inspector gadget. Yeah, I think the rag's gonna be easier. You're really supposed to kind of wipe it in too, as you go. Work it into the surface of the wood. Well, there's side one. I didn't think that was too bad. I did the feet while I was at it. Maple stain's a little bit lighter, not quite as even. Like that streak right there was just from a grain in the plywood. But overall, it's, you know, roughly the same color and everything. I think it'll be okay, but we'll see how it looks when it's all upright and installed. Speaking of upright, that was a killer on the back. So I'm not doing the rest of that with this thing laying down. I'm gonna get it up, get it in place, and then do all the rest sitting on a stool or something. That left side was the most important side to get done because it's gonna be up against the wall and I can't access it. So the rest should be easy though. It's really easy applying this stuff, honestly. It's just basically wiping it on with a cloth. I'm not doing anything special at all, not doing the brush or the squeegee. and it seems to be going on just fine. 15 minutes later, give it a good wipe off, buffing it a couple times in between to just kind of work it into the grains of the wood. But it seems pretty dummy proof, foolproof. I like it for that reason, and it also smells nice, which makes it a lot more pleasant to apply. I'm not like in a gas mask, and I can do it here in the bathroom and not like outside or something. Oh. Perfect timing.
What are we doing?
Moving this back where it's supposed to be. 1, 2, 3. You helping, George? You helping or you watching? We're in. Fits like a glove on the wall. That's all she wrote for the initial finish of just the body. Still a long way to go, but countertops come tomorrow. Like I mentioned, we got to go out to the countertop fabricator shop and see that in action, which was awesome. We're gonna do a whole separate kind of how it's made video on that. And as of the time this video is going live, I don't have the doors and drawers of this vanity done yet, so that's gonna be its own video as well. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss those. It truly was a really cool experience to see how these things got made. Don't forget to scan the QR code, masondixonacres.com, and get on the list for the No Regrets Build Guide launching in March 2026. If you're planning a new build or remodel, whether you're doing it yourself or hiring it out, this resource is made exactly for you. It's meant to save you a ton of time, energy, and money. And you get the special launch bonuses that save us thousands of dollars just for being on the list. As always, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.